This is the 2023 year-end recap of the stuff that I liked in 2023. So this won't be limited to just games. This will be like basically all kinds of media I consumed. Starting off with the best TV show I watched. Now, I actually only watched one TV show that came out in 2023. So this category might have a little bit of a bias, but the best TV show that I watched from this year was The Last of Us. Now, even though this is the only TV show from this year that I watched, I enjoyed it thoroughly. Now, The Last of Us is one of my favorite games, and seeing it adapted into a TV show and being played out in live action was a lot of fun. And even if they took a few liberties with the story, I thought it worked pretty well, and I enjoyed the episodes where they spent more time like fleshing out some of the characters that we only get to see a glimpse of in the game. Particularly the episode with Bill and Frank, where they really developed their relationship, I thought was beautiful. And it was probably like one of my favorite moments of any TV show I've ever seen. So I loved The Last of Us, and yeah, it was a highlight of my year. My album of the year. Now, I didn't think this year was particularly great for music, at least from the releases that I heard, but there were a couple standouts, and the one that won me over the hardest was JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown's Scaring the Hose. Now, JPEG Mafia and Danny Brown are two of my favorite artists ever, and it was surreal hearing them work together on an entire collab album that was like 40 minutes long with some of the best production I've ever heard in my life. It was just a beautiful moment, and this album has not left my rotation since it released in March of this year. So if you haven't listened to it, I would highly recommend you check it out. It's a little experimental, I guess you could say, but don't let that turn you off from it, because if you are able to get into it, you will probably come away absolutely adoring it like I do. It's my favorite movie of the year. Now, I actually watched quite a few movies this year. That's something I don't normally do, but there were a lot of movies that I really liked from this year, but the one that I look back on the most fondly was Oppenheimer. Now, I'm kind of a history nerd, I guess, particularly for the era that this movie takes place in. I didn't particularly know that much about Dr. Oppenheimer, but I feel like I came away from the movie knowing a little bit more about his personality, even if it was like, a little more dramatized. And it was actually surprisingly historically accurate. I thought it would take some liberties. I remember there was this one moment where some U.S. diplomats are discussing where they would drop the bomb on Japan, and one of them said to not drop it on, I forget which city, but his rationale was that him and his wife had their honeymoon there, and that actually happened. So I thought that was very funny that it was included in the movie. And yeah, I really enjoyed Oppenheimer. So now for the main event here, probably what you're all really curious about, my games of the year. 2023 was one of the best years in the medium's history for new releases. Now, I say new releases and not gaming because the industry took a hit this year. Thousands of developers lost their jobs, and big AAA releases that were successful sales-wise, netting like millions of copies sold, they still didn't even produce a profit for the company because these budgets for these games are so bloated because of the mismanagement from these studios. I don't think that this model for game production is very sustainable in the long term. So I really hope that some changes are made so that we don't see a total collapse of the industry. And the way things have been going lately have been pretty grim. So I'm not super optimistic, but I really hope that some changes can be made. Now, with that being said, I do want to just kind of go over some of the releases that I did not get to, but I had my eyes on. Now, I'm just going to list them off because there's not really a whole lot to say because I did not play them. But just to kind of, let you know that they're not left off my list because I hated them or something. Now, here we go. System Shock Remake, Baldur's Gate 3, Armored Core 6, Sea of Stars, Octopath Traveler 2, Ghost Trick Phantom Detective Remake, Blasphemous 2, Viewfinder, Lies of P, Spider-Man 2, Alan Wake 2, Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, Star Ocean Second Story Remake, Humanity, and Lethal Company. Now those are the games I did not get to and I had on my radar. Now I actually own quite a few of these. I just didn't get a chance to play them this year, unfortunately. Before we get to the brand new releases, I just kind of wanted to quickly touch on the remakes I did play. The Dead Space remake, I played a couple hours of, and I wasn't super into it. I had never played Dead Space before. I'm not super into like third-person action shooter games, so that's probably just like a disconnect there and not any failing of the remake. So if that sounds like it's your thing, I'd recommend it, because from what I could tell, it was a really solid remake. Super Mario RPG. I had never played this game, and the remake seemed like the perfect opportunity to jump in. Now, they added like a lot of really nice features to the combat. There's like a timing-based input for combat now, where you can like block or do extra damage depending on if you time a button press correctly. And that kept the combat from ever getting stale for me. It was a lot of fun to try to master the timing. Now, with that being said, I can't say I fully understand the like unanimous acclaim this game has. Mario RPG, the original. However, I can respect it for laying out the groundwork for the future Mario RPGs that really captured the hearts of millions of people around the world. I do respect it a lot, and I do enjoy the game, and it didn't become like an absolute favorite of mine. Resident Evil 4 Remake. Now, I played the original Resident Evil 4 for the first time this year, and I liked it. You know, I definitely see why it was so influential and beloved. It's just, you know, like I said with Dead Space, it's not really my favorite genre. The remake, I think, kind of improved on some of the stuff I didn't love about the original RE4, but I also didn't finish this remake. But I think next time I want to run through Resident Evil 4 again, I'll just play the remake and actually finish it. Yeah, I like that they're kind of fleshing out the world of RE4 a little more in this remake. And the best remake that I played this year wasn't actually a remake, it was a remaster, and that was Metroid Prime Remastered. Now, the original is one of my favorite games of all time, and it was absolutely surreal to get a shadow drop on the day of the Nintendo Direct, and it looked incredible. I seriously think this is the best looking game on the Switch. I couldn't believe it was Metroid that was getting that treatment. I was like elated. I wish I recorded my reaction to the reveal, but unfortunately I did not. Yeah, this game was like just a treat, man. I've played the original so many times, but the remaster is going to be my preferred way to play it from here on out. It's just that good. So if you are like on the fence about Metroid Prime and you're like curious about the remaster, I would definitely suggest you pick it up. But if you're watching me, you probably love Metroid Prime already. So yeah. Okay. New games that I played. So we're just going to go from the bottom to the top here. Now I only played 9 new games. So at number 9 we have F-Zero 99. I only put a couple hours into this one. It was fun. It just like didn't really, you know, blow me away or anything. But it's cool to have a new like F-Zero thing, and it was cool that it was adapted into the 99 format where it's like Battle Royale. It was a cool concept. I don't really have an itch to like keep replaying it like so many other people do. But you know, I had fun with it. Number 8, Friends vs. Friends. Now, this is something that my buddy Chariot Rider suggested that I get, and me and a couple of other YouTubers had a game night where we like played this. It's basically like a first-person shooter, like team-based deck builder game. You're placed in an arena with a teammate and like 2 opponents, and you can just shoot a gun normally, and like you can use the architecture on the map to kind of like, you know, use it as cover or whatever. But you also have like cards that you can build the deck out of that give you like special abilities, and they transform the map or like, you know, give your opponents debuffs or you buffs and stuff. It's a lot of fun, and I didn't play it too much, but the couple times I did, I enjoyed it thoroughly. Number 7, Pizza Tower. Now this one I was not expecting to actually play, but when I finally did, I enjoyed it quite a bit. 2D platformers kind of have to work a lot harder than some other genres to really get me into them. But Pizza Tower I thought was great. I loved the art style. I loved the fast-paced gameplay. I love how, like, when you get to the end of the level, the dynamic is completely subverted, because then, like, you have that giant, like, whatever the fuck that thing is, like, chasing you through the level, and you're, like, under the gun of a timer. It was a lot of fun, and I liked collecting all the like, ingredients throughout the level. Yeah, if you're on the fence about Pizza Tower, I would highly recommend it as someone that doesn't love 2D platformers. Number 6, Final Fantasy 16. Now, this one, overall, I came away loving it, but I definitely have some problems with it. The combat stayed really fun throughout most of the game. I did have some issues with the story, but I've heard that a lot of, like, really critical character development is, like, kept behind side quests, and that isn't necessarily an issue in and of itself, but I felt that the main story could have used a lot more of that, because there was a lot of dead air in it, where, like, there were multiple hours where you just aren't really making any meaningful progress in the story, and it made it hard to want to continue playing at those times. When this game is firing on all cylinders, it is, like, one of the coolest fucking video games I've ever played in my life. A lot of the boss fights are, like, insane, and the music is phenomenal, and I think it's definitely worth playing, even if you aren't really a big Final Fantasy fan, or this game doesn't really look like it's for you. I think it's definitely worth just at least trying out the demo. 5, Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Now, I originally wasn't planning on getting this game, but after seeing all the reception online, I thought I'd give it a try, and I was pleasantly surprised. I have a full video on this game, if you haven't seen it already, for my more complete thoughts on the game itself and how it fits into the broader 2D Mario series. But for now, I'll just tell you, it's good. You should check it out. Number 4, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Future Redeemed. Now, I got into the Xenoblade series this year, and after getting through kind of a rough patch with 1, I found myself hopelessly addicted to the entire franchise. I binged all 3 of the main games and all 3 of their DLC expansions, and now I can confidently say that it is one of my favorite series, like, ever. 3 I really loved, and I thought the expansion was the perfect way to cap off the trilogy. Now, the combat is just as good as ever. They have a really neat cast of new characters and returning ones, which I really liked. The music was also phenomenal. I liked a lot of the changes they made to the base game, like, through this DLC, and it was really cool to kind of revisit some of the old areas that we didn't see in the base game of 3. But yeah, it was really fun. I enjoyed it a lot, so play it. Play the whole series if you haven't. It's great. Number 3, The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. Now, as somebody who is currently surrounded by Zelda posters and has a Master Sword tattoo on his arm, it feels a little strange to be putting this game this low. But I'll tell you why. Breath of the Wild is probably my favorite game of all time. The experience of exploring that game's world for the first time is something that I'll carry with me the rest of my life. And it did have its problems, but they were incredibly easy to overlook because of just how good everything else about the game was. And I was really hoping for the sequel, they would hear some of the criticism and kind of address it. Instead, they kind of took a route that I'm not a big fan of. Now, they kept the original Hyrule from Breath of the Wild, but they stacked Sky Islands on top and a depths layer under it. Now, that's all cool and good, but the problem is I didn't feel that compelled to explore either area because there wasn't a whole lot of meaningful content in each one, especially the Sky Islands. I felt they were sorely lacking in things to do once you get off, like, the Great Sky Island in the beginning of the game. After that, it's just kind of like you're searching for shrines or, like, you know, item dispensers or maybe, like, costumes. The depths have a lot more going on, but a lot of it is, like, recycled content. It's like an inverted version of Hyrule, and there's, like, the boss fights and, like, big enemy fights from all over the game that are just kind of like rehashed down there. And I didn't really love exploring the depths. What I did enjoy was exploring Hyrule and kind of catching up with like all the NPCs that, were there in the first game and just seeing like what they were up to. But the problem is that didn't really live up to, the first experience playing Breath of the Wild, when this is you're walking through like an entirely brand new world. And yeah, like there was, I think revisiting the map kind of has its own merits, but it just doesn't live up to that first experience, like I said. But that's not even my biggest issue. My problem is, I think basically every problem I had with Breath of the Wild wasn't addressed in Tears of the Kingdom. They doubled down on it. So like, I don't think shrines are necessarily a problem. I think they should be like supplemental to like big substantial dungeons. And Tears of the Kingdom has dungeons, but they are basically just glorified divine beasts. I think the Fire Temple was pretty good, but aside from that, I think you could take like any divine beast in Breath of the Wild and it was a better dungeon than like everything else in Tears of the Kingdom, aesthetics aside. But yeah, the dungeons were my biggest letdown here, and the shrines didn't really pick up the slack either. They're just kind of more of the same shrines from Breath of the Wild, which I don't think is like a bad thing in and of itself, but it was disappointing that they weren't a little more substantial. But yeah, I'll make a video on Tears of the Kingdom at some point. I just kind of want to cement my thoughts on it. Overall, I had a ton of fun with Tears of the Kingdom, and I was riding with it as my game of the year for quite a while until I really sat down and thought about the 2 games that are higher on this list. One of which is Hi-Fi Rush, my second game of the year, I guess. Now, Hi-Fi Rush, if you haven't heard of it, is a character action game that is also a rhythm game. You like attack to the beat of the music that's playing, and depending on how accurate you are to the rhythm of the music is like how effective your attacks are. And this game was so much fun. I originally played it and I didn't love it, but then I went back to it and it became like one of my all-time favorite games. The art style is fantastic, the soundtrack is great, the boss fights are incredible, and it like is constantly throwing new ideas at you as you play, and it's just I can't even begin to describe how much I love this game. It is fantastic. I would highly recommend you check it out if it even sounds remotely interesting to you. It's great. Now, my number 1 game of the year, I did not think would end up being my number 1 game of the year, but lo and behold, it is Pikmin 4. Now, Pikmin 4 gave me something I did not think was possible from the Pikmin franchise. It's hard to even put into words how good this game is. So, it's basically a culmination of like everything that has been established in the Pikmin franchise up until this point. And they have refined every mechanic to near perfection. All of the new ideas they've introduced, primarily like Ochi and like the hub world, and just all of the new like little puzzles they implement throughout the world they're so much fun. I loved the return of caves. They were made a lot less frustrating. Just the way the world is meticulously designed, it is just, I don't even know how to describe it. It is incredibly fun to work through, and just seeing like the progress you make through each day. And there's so much to collect. I went through and I 100%ed this game. It never got old. Like, I 100%ed every area, all the caves, I got all the castaways, I did all the Dondori challenges. This was the most fun gaming experience of the year for me, and it is one I'll look back on very fondly. Yeah, Pikmin 4, Game of the Year, 2023, easily. Now, before we wrap up, there is one more category I had. My favorite meme of the year. Now, this comes from Heel vs. Babyface. Now, you probably have seen this video. This is him reacting to the Starfield pronoun selector, where he just screams like, "Fucking pronouns!" I love that video. I watched it so many times. It's great. Yeah, that's 2023. Hope you had a good year. Hope you're looking forward to next year. See ya.